All right, so my topic is Atlantic hurricanes and climate change. I'm Emily Williams, and so the first thing I wanted to discuss in this for this persuasive video assignment was why I chose hurricanes and climate change and what I'm trying to be persuasive about. Um, and so obviously now in the world, climate change is a big issue, and um, unfortunately, at least in the United States, it's now kind of up to the private sector to make those choices to fight climate change because our current administration doesn't believe it exists and pretty much pulled us out of the Paris Agreement and threw away the Clean Power Plan. So it's kind of up to individuals to make those choices to fight climate change ourselves. Um, but unfortunately, that means you have to convince those individuals, and some individuals won't see um, how if it doesn't affect them, is why bother doing anything about it. And hurricanes, I feel, open up another possibility. They don't just focus on how it's affecting nature; it focuses on how it affects people, um, and how it will like disrupt society itself. And some people see that as more of an issue than nature. So it's just one other side of the way to convincing people to why they should be worried about climate change. And that even though that's a kind of a sad, depressing thought, it's just in the long run, um, you might as long as they're going to be fighting it, if the main reason is that they don't want their seaside mansion to get fall in the ocean, then that's fine. As long as they're going to make those choices to fight climate change. So yeah, so I would decide to use to show people how it's actually affecting it. There's been more in like the last season, tons of more impactful storms that have devastated communities, like Hurricane Harvey, which lasted from August 17th to September 3rd, and it was the first. It was a major hurricane, and it was the first to make landfall in Texas since 2005, with wind speeds over 110 miles per hour, and it was the strongest hurricane to ever even hit the state since 1961. And when compared to the other hurricanes in the continental U.S. U.S., it brought the most precipitation um, uh, in ever, with a total of 48.2 inches of rain. And this led to about 70% of Harris County being covered in a foot and a half of water. And there was so much flooding caused by Hurricane Harvey, obviously, because we've seen in the news since it happened this year. It was devastating. And the large, relatively high death toll and the billions of dollars in damages. Um, Another example of a recent hurricane that's caused a lot of damage, Hurricane Irma, which was in late August, lasted through about half of September, and it was the largest Atlantic basin hurricane ever recorded in the Caribbean Sea, and about $100 billion in damages. And like even it show how these tiny little islands get completely demolished by these hurricanes because they don't have the. I talk more about that later, so I can stop talking about that now. Sorry. Hurricane Maria, another one that just happened in this recent kind of thing of hurricanes. And that was happened in like the beginning of September and by the end of October. And this one hit completely devastated Puerto Rico, leaving it completely without power, and it averaged about $45 billion to $95 billion in damages. And all these hurricanes that happened in these recent last few months were extremely powerful, Category 4 and 5 hurricanes, and that's just kind of unusual for um, for what we usually get. So it's why they're so significant, and they really show and make people stop and think that wait a second, this is actually happening right in front of us. We should do something about it. Um, and so, is climate change actually impacting the recent hurricanes, and what's it actually doing to make them worse? Or so they're not really increasing the frequency, but they're bringing in more precipitation, and it's causing an increase in sea level. So that's I can go on to that, and this all is making everything more destructive in general. The So these issues that they're going to be causing is like more precipitation, which is going to end up with more flooding because once the permeable ground, so like the soil and stuff, gets completely saturated by water, nothing else can really soak through, so it's just going to build up. And then on all these impermeable surfaces like the highways as you can see in those pictures, the water is not going to sink in anywhere, so it's just going to build up and cause more flooding. Um, so that can be a serious issue, and flooding causes a lot of damages. So that's how precipitation would cause damages. And so the next part, sea level rise and issues caused by it. So to start off, I wanted to say a few things about our so the current rate of sea level rise is about 3.4 millimeters per year, and it's expected by the NOAA, which is the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, that they predict that by 2100 there will be either about 8 inches to 6.6 feet increase in total sea level. And so it is a wide range depending on what we decide to do about climate change and everything. So there's a lot of things that could go wrong. So what is causing the sea level rise in the first place? So that's because of thermal expansion of seawater. And so as the temperatures get warmer, the water molecules spread out, and as a result, the water is physically expanding and causing it to become higher. And then the warmer temperatures are melting glaciers and therefore adding more volume into the water. So what does this cause? This can cause, so currently in the United States, about 40% of people are living in areas where they're at risk for flooding and erosion and other side effects from storms. And this just, with more people living, but since how much, it just increases the range of how much damage hurricanes can do because of how much water is flowing into those areas, that there's more areas are at risk of being harmed now, and so that means more people will be harmed too. And so people, like, one issue I always think of Plum Island, sort of how they're always fighting to kind of keep the water not from destroying it, which it's doing a little bit of, and how people are trying to save their homes and stuff like that. All those people who live on those coastal places, and they have to put their houses on stilts to avoid storms. And though how much of a problem this is to them, because no matter how much they're going to try, their homes are going to get swept into the ocean. So people who just live on the coast too are just at risk of being, losing everything. So yeah. And so then problems that hurricanes leave behind. All right, so there's physical, obviously, and then there's an economic impact as well. So physical is obviously homes being destroyed, businesses, and damages to infrastructure. And once infrastructure and all those businesses get damaged, like the whole society kind of just crumbles. Once businesses get destroyed, you can't use them. They can't develop. They can't make product. They can't transport it if everything's destroyed. And the society can't really function in a lot of these places where they're completely destroyed. And in the Caribbean, a lot of the little tiny countries are already at a disadvantage because because of poverty, and so they have less strong infrastructure. So those buildings aren't built as well, and they're going to get destroyed more easily. And then they already have niche markets, kind of like really specific ones, so that they're not going to be able to transfer that one good that gets destroyed, and they're kind of screwed. And so also in the Caribbean islands, tourism is a big industry, and if like Puerto Rico, no one's going to want to travel Puerto Rico while it's not having any running water or power. So that puts a strain on some things there. And then, so yeah, especially with a lot of these Caribbean islands being on the coast, it causes a lot of issues because that's where they're centered around. And so then it means they have more of a risk of being completely destroyed by these hurricanes and the waters they bring in. All right. And so solving these issues has proven to be difficult, as we have seen with Puerto Rico, which was devastated by the impacts of Hurricane Maria, and it still today is trying to recover. And so even months after the storm, it is nowhere near where it was for recovery, and it's only has about 46.6% of its power back and 75% of its telecommunication, and about only 1 out of 10 people have 1 out of 10 people lack usable water. And so why Puerto Rico is having such a struggle with recovering is one aspect is donor fatigue. Because of how many hurricanes happened one by one. So people at first donated all their money to Hurricane Harvey because they wanted to help out with the issue. Um, so then they didn't have money to. They didn't like, oh, I don't already donated this. I don't have the money to donate to that charity. So that was an issue playing into it. And then we also have a lot of people feel that the government's actions to adequately fund the relief efforts haven't been enough, and there was angry Twitter wars and things, a lot of political debate issues occurring, and so Puerto Rico had a really tough time even getting funds to help recover, and they still don't think it's enough. All right, so the question I'm asking at the end is, so if it's such a problem to deal with, why shouldn't we just try and prevent it? That's kind of another issue, one of the other kind of like reasonings. Like, obviously, it's going to cause all these issues for so many people. Why don't we just try to put as much effort and time as we can to stop these, to try to prevent this and make it less dangerous for people, and just try to, save as much sort of lives and resources as possible. Um, so we should be focusing our efforts on, um, as you can see with all the examples like Puerto Rico and stuff, it's going to be time, money, resources wasted to try to fix all those issues, which we should, though, obviously. But why don't we try to at least not make everything worse by creating more intense hurricanes, and that we're going to cause more destruction, more death, more everything, um, by switching to more green sort of things like reducing emissions to stop climate change, which would therefore release less CO2, which would help the environment not warm up as fast. So yeah, that's my presentation. All right, and here's the works I did. Hopefully I explained everything.